Hi, I'm Jeff Walters, and welcome to The Minutes. And thanks for listening today. It's great to have you along on The Minutes for the week of May the 12th, 2025. This is a City of Thunder Bay podcast. The Minutes takes a look at what happened at Thunder Bay City Council this past week. You can find The Minutes wherever you get your podcasts, including our YouTube channel and our website, thunderbay.ca/The Minutes. If you want to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening at City Hall, just hit that subscribe button. On this episode, I'll have a rundown of what happened at Thunder Bay City Council this week, as well an interview with Aaron Ward, the city's manager of engineering. Council got an update this week on the Victoriaville project, being the demolition of the mall and the rebuilding of Victoria Avenue. We'll hear all about it in just a few moments. But first, Council started off its meeting this week with the Thunder Bay Hydro Corporation Annual General Meeting. The AGM allows Council to see the audited financial statements, which is still legally known as Thunder Bay Hydro. Thunder Bay Hydro, which is 100% owned by the City of Thunder Bay, in turn, owns 91.69% of Synergy North. The remainder of that utility is owned by the City of Kenora. The annual report of Synergy North is also presented at the AGM. Now, Council, as the sole shareholder, has to approve the financial statements, appoint the board chair, and approve previous minutes. As part of its annual report, Synergy North notes that it provided $1.5 million in financial assistance to its customers, has 953 homes powered by renewable energy from projects owned by the utility, had 2,500 new accounts last year, had nearly 5,500 accounts move or close last year, and had 0 health and safety incidents for a stretch of 941 days without a lost time injury. The utility also spent about $12.6 million on capital projects last year and has a total of 126 employees. Synergy North serves 441 square kilometers of customers with 7,600 transformers, 22,000 poles, 269 kilometers of underground power lines, and 940 kilometers of overhead lines. Synergy North also noted that it has about 52,000 customers using the time of use pricing, with about 4,000 customers on tiered pricing. Just under 200 customers had the ultra-low power rate, which is applied overnight, and that's generally for customers with electric vehicles. Last year, Synergy North had $151.6 million in revenue, with $147 million expenses. That leaves about $3.8 million in earnings for Synergy North for 2024. Council dealt with some planning matters on Monday night. Council voted to put 135 and 137 Frederica Street West under site plan control. The land includes a building as well as a vacant lot in Westfort. Site plan control means that the city will approve drawings for development on the lots for items like parking or landscaping. Also, during the public portion of the planning meeting, Council approved an official plan amendment as well as a zoning bylaw for 1151 John Street Road. The amendments allow for the construction of 2 45-unit apartment buildings. The proponents spoke to Council about the project, and there were also 3 speakers who had concerns about traffic, street lighting, sidewalks, and general access. Administration says it will manage those concerns via site plan control. There was also a discussion on stormwater management, with talk about hardscaping and landscaping, which is also managed through site plan control. The land is currently used for an equipment rental business. It was zoned as service commercial, but was rezoned to the urban mid-rise zone. The development is expected to efficiently use land and the water and sewer services that are available in the area, along with providing a full range of housing, including affordable housing, along with supporting public transit. 14 comments from people in the area were received, including concerns over increased traffic and congestion, safety, noise, pollution, environmental degradation, inappropriate location, and scale. The planning department says the development is an example of residential intensification and development of an underutilized commercial site, along with being in the urban settlement area. Again, the official plan amendment as well as the zoning bylaw were both amended for that development. A few announcements at Monday night's council meeting. Councillor Kristen Oliver will hold a Westfort Ward meeting on May the 14th. It will start at 7 p.m. and take place at the West Thunder Community Centre. Councillor Andrew Folds will also have a Current River Ward meeting on June the 10th from 7 till 9 p.m. It will be at the Current River Rec Centre. And Councillor Albert Aiello will have a McIntyre Ward meeting. It will take place on June the 25th. It will start at 7 p.m. at the 55 Plus Centre on River Street. There was a closed session meeting this week, and coming out of closed session, there was the sale of a property that was declared surplus. The land at 635 Fulton Boulevard was sold to an Ontario numbered company for $995,000 for development. Another closed session meeting was established for May the 26th, and that's so Council can receive information that is solicitor-client privilege. Council learned on Monday how the Assessment Growth Funds policy will work. The information was slated to be presented to Council on April the 28th, but due to a lengthy discussion on the temporary village, the report was deferred to this week. The policy creates a clear direction for how tax revenues that come from assessment growth will be used. The goal is to have taxation from growth invested in programs that drive growth, address service demands and changes, and support the long-term sustainability of major assets in the city. The program works that any revenue brought in from new assessment growth will be earmarked for the assessment growth funds. If the 2025 budget was used as an example, about $1.7 million in growth would be used for the fund. The money will be spent based on business cases using the following priorities: operating or one-time costs that come from extending services to a new development, addressing costs from an increased demand on city services because of population and economic growth, creating, maintaining, or expanding a community improvement plan or growth priorities, dedicating funds to the capital budget to address the infrastructure deficit or support services for any of the previous items. The policy also says if all of the growth funds are not spent for the year, the remaining money will get moved to the Capital General Reserve Fund if that amount is under $100,000. If it is over $100,000, it will get spread out over the Capital General Reserve Fund, used to pay down debt or for creating and maintaining recreation parks and facilities. Council received the 2024 Annual Safety Report this week after it was deferred from the April the 28th meeting due to a long discussion on the temporary village. The report gives an overview of corporate safety statistics and safety measures over the past year. In 2024, the total number of reported incidents went up by just over 2%, but the number of lost time incidents went down by 7%. The leading causes of injury were overexertion and mental stress. The majority of mental stress cases come from paramedics with Superior North EMS, which made up about 21% of all reported injuries. There is work being done for mental health support for both paramedics and firefighters. Mental health injuries for firefighters dropped to 0 last year. The overexertion injuries are typically from lifting or moving people, which happens to staff at Pioneer Ridge Long-Term Care or with paramedics. These two groups are the most often struck or hit while in the workplace as well. The report says the Employee Safety Task Force is working on reducing violent incidents through a number of channels, which includes support and training. And overall, the city says its WSIB claims decreased by nearly 17% last year. Council got an update this week on the parking strategy and in the proposed on-street parking fee moratorium. A notice of motion is needed to make the change that is recommended by administration. A notice of motion will come forward to the May the 26th meeting with debate and decision at the June the 2nd meeting. The report to Council says that while there has been an increase in the use of city parking facilities since 2023, there is still a significant amount of parking spaces that are not being used. The report says it is unclear what is driving current usage patterns. In the report, the revitalization of both downtown areas and economic growth is a key reason to suggest that the temporary 2-hour complimentary on-street parking program could help drive growth in the core areas. People who park could then purchase an additional 2 hours of parking at the same spot for a total of 4 hours. Longer stays would be accommodated at surface lots or in the parkades, with this program running until the end of 2027. The concept will attract more people downtown and acknowledge the challenges faced by businesses and property owners in the cores, along with construction challenges on the north side, and then post-pandemic changes in consumer spending. The city, however, also wants to collect data on how many people are parking downtown, meaning people parking will still need to use the pay machines or the online app for the free parking. Data collected during this time, which will not be influenced by price, will be used to create a baseline. People who can't use an app will be manually tracked by parking enforcement officers. Administration says the information gathered will be used in the future to make sure that there is convenient and reliable parking access, promote space turnover for visitors and businesses, and encourage sustainable transportation and support economic growth. Administration also recommends turning the paid parking concept at the waterfront into a 4-hour no-pay window, with the option to purchase an additional 4 hours. The report says this encourages recreational use at the waterfront and will discourage long-term use at the lots. Changes to parking in the city were introduced in January of 2024, including an increase in parking rates, introduction of paid parking at the waterfront and on Saturdays, as well as expanded hours of enforcement and closing underutilized lots. There was public backlash to the paid parking at the waterfront, as well as the expansion of enforcement hours. The expansion of enforcement hours was reversed in December of last year. Administration says the recommended changes are a strategic shift in approach to how parking is managed in the city. The primary focus of the previous parking plan was to make the parking system financially self-sufficient and was to encourage people to use the parkades instead of on-street spaces. Administration says while financial sustainability is important, parking also needs to meet the community's needs, as revenue generation should be a byproduct of a well-designed system and not the primary goal. It should also enhance the community experience, the report says, and contributes to the overall mobility needs of the city, including businesses, residents, and visitors. Paid parking should be used in high-demand areas where turnover is necessary. Time limiting can be used in areas of moderate demand. The report says that the 2024 report notes that demand-based pricing could be considered in the future and could be a key element of the city's parking strategy. Now, based on current available data, metered on-street spaces are very underutilized, with usage near the 10% mark. That figure doesn't include coins that are deposited at meters. The North Core has the highest use of on-street parking, while the South Core and West Core areas had the lowest rates. The report notes that the zones used by the parking app are too large at this time and cannot be used to gain granular information about each neighborhood. At the waterfront, the report notes that the goal in that area is not to necessarily have turnover, as it's a hope to have people enjoy the waterfront. About 200 day or 4-hour passes for the marina were sold in 2024. If those pass holders parked daily, only about 15% of marina spaces would be taken at all times. This is why a 4-hour block is encouraged, to have all-day parkers discouraged, but to have enough time to explore the waterfront. As for the parkades, about 56% of the waterfront parkade is used, while about 29% of the spaces at Victoriaville are rented. There are much fewer daily spaces rented at the Victoriaville parkade compared to the waterfront parkade. The report notes that tailored pricing and operating strategies are needed to increase usage and to make sure that the parkades support the downtown areas. The 2-hour free parking in the cores is the first step in the plan to change how parking is administered in the city. The second is to create a plan to increase the number of parking zones in the city to gather better data on parking use. This will allow administration to make decisions on parking in the future with a better understanding on utilization. As well, there will be research done and future considerations to create zone-specific parking pricing and create a plan to increase or decrease parking rates, along with time-of-day pricing and event-specific parking. There will also be changes to parkade pricing and reinvesting surplus into the core areas, along with regular community chats about parking. The approval of the 2-hour free parking will be monitored by the city to make sure that the lack of fees is not having a negative impact on businesses or residents. Administration expects that fine revenue will go down with the 2-hour free parking. Fines from on-street parking made up about 45% of the revenue in 2024. As well, a significant reduction in on-street revenue is expected, as about 90% of on-street parking is for 2 hours or less. The proposed changes at the waterfront would also eliminate most revenue from that area. To help balance the books, there will be no contribution to the parking reserve fund over those 2 years. It's projected that about $337 will be lost on parking due to the decrease in revenue. If additional funds are needed to operate municipal parking services, funds will come from the Assessment Growth Fund. And finally, Council got an update this week on the guiding financial principles, which will serve as the foundation for the city's long-term financial plan. This was slated to be presented at the April 28th meeting, but was deferred due to discussion on the temporary village. The overall goal is to plan and deliver cost-effective and financially sustainable services. The plan calls for financial sustainability through respect for tax and taxpayers, sustainable and integrated capital planning, and maximizing value for money. Financial resiliency includes supporting growth and economic development, users pay where appropriate, and a fair and sustainable tax policy. Financial flexibility is all about debt management, reserve and reserve fund management, and responsible investing. These concepts show responsibility but also set the stage for long-term growth. The plans have no immediate financial implication, but will provide guidance for financial decision-making in the future. And that's a wrap as to what happened at Council this week. For more information on anything that happens at Council, please visit our website, thunderbay.ca/council. Well, by this time next year, Victoria Avenue in downtown Fort William will look very different. You can stand on either Brodie or Archibald Streets and look right through where Victoriaville, that's the mall, used to be. Council wrote an update this week on the Victoriaville demolition project, which will be followed by the rebuilding of Victoria Avenue. Aaron Ward is the city's manager of engineering, and he's heading up the Victoriaville project, and he joins me today in the Minute Studio. Aaron, thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Yeah, glad that you can make it in. So bring me up to date here, just a block or two from where we were sitting right now. If people go into Victoriaville right now, is it any different right now?
So Victoriaville Mall, of course, has gone down a bit of a slow progression the last number of years. And that's why many years ago, the administration brought a report to council for some options to repurpose Victoriaville Mall and what that could be, whether it's a reinvested building space or perhaps, again, a new public space, or do we make it the now preferred option, which is to reopen Victoria Avenue to traffic and to make 2 new public plazas. So Victoriaville Mall right now is fairly empty, actually, as a lot of the materials and benches, the tables and chairs, they've all been removed in advance of this upcoming construction project.
So and it's not really, I guess, construction first. It's the opposite of construction to start off.
Yeah, the term we're using is deconstruction, not demolition. It's a deconstruction, as we're taking down the mall, but at the same time also renovating the buildings that are there, both the city's buildings, the Civic Center, as well as some of the private buildings that need upgrades since they've been enclosed for the last 50-odd years. Yeah,
so what do you have to do then to these buildings? Because I guess they're just not, they're not ready to see rain, essentially, is what it is.
That's right. So many of the buildings here, they were exposed to the elements 50 years ago prior to the mall being built. But you can imagine things like window caulking would have dried out over that time. So many of the things we found that were original, we have to go back in and make them now weather tight, reseal them, ensure that they'll be safe from the elements. One of the interesting things we found when we were doing the design process for this project, though, was several of the walls that you see within the mall today are actually fake walls or false facades. They were built at the time the mall was built, and they are built as interior walls, so there's no vapor barrier, there's no weatherproofing, there's no insulation. So for some of these buildings, there's going to be quite a lot of work happening to rebuild those walls to make them now code appropriate, to make them weather tight, and to make them appropriate to be exposed again.
And did you expect that when you went in to inspect some of these places?
Absolutely not. So the drawings going back to 1970s weren't the best in terms of detailing everything that was there. And again, it was a very complex building project going back to the 1970s. So through the design process, we were doing some what we called demolition testing to open up walls to see what was there, to verify what we were inferring from the drawings. And what we found was not what was shown on the drawings. So that's where we found that these walls were actually built as interior walls. Not only were they interior walls, they were actually founded, or they were sitting on the mall slab, not the actual building's, original building's foundation.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
So quite an interesting find, which led to a bit of a delay in the project. And that's where the project, when you go back to the beginning of years ago, the time frame, we were hoping to be well under construction now, whereas we're just starting construction now.
Okay, yeah, because you had to rebuild before you could deconstruct, essentially.
Exactly. So it wasn't just a matter of renovating buildings and resealing windows and doors. We actually have to rebuild entire storefronts now, again, because they're built as interior walls across probably 60% of the mall are those interior walls, not exterior rated walls.
And I guess when we get to the deconstruction portion of this too, you can't just drive a front end loader down the middle and take it down. There's a bit more to it than that.
That's right. So the actual, it'll be exciting to see the change. That's where you mentioned, what does it look like now versus a few months from now or come next year? There's some preparatory work the contractor has to do over the next month or two. But once July rolls around, you'll actually see the mall structure come down in 2 months. So by the early September, you will be able to see through Victoria Avenue and Syndicate Avenue, and the entire mall structure will be gone. The contractor does have a very skilled demolition contractor retained for this. And they have a very aggressive but safe and appropriate plan to bring the structure down very quickly. What's interesting with the mall, and a lot of people may not realize it, is it's actually founded on piles. So it doesn't have its own foundation. So if you walk through the mall, you'll see those brick pillars.
Oh, yeah.
And the entire mall is resting on that structure. And there's just the steel beams that come across, and the roof is just sitting on that. And it's essentially just flashing where the mall roof meets the private roofs that are there. So it's not structurally connected, it's just kind of resting and flashed in place. So quite easy to remove that from the private buildings without impacting them too much.
Okay, well that's pretty interesting, yeah, because I was always wondering how they were attached, obviously, right? So obviously once the mall comes down, then we have to put something in its place. That's going to be the rebuilding of Victoria Avenue. Tell me a bit about how that's going to work.
Absolutely. So after the mall is deconstructed this year and the other storefronts in the city's buildings are kind of made weather tight again, that's when in spring of 2026, we'll start to see the construction of Victoria Avenue. That is rather the reconstruction, since we're putting it back from when it was removed back in the late 1970s. So Victoria Avenue, very similar to what we're doing on Court and Red River Road, will be built to kind of a bit of a higher standard to help improve the downtown core as part of the city's ongoing revitalization efforts for Fort William. So the street will include, again, a paved road, but we will have really wide concrete and unit paver boulevards. And a unique feature here in terms of Victoria Avenue is we have a 66-foot wide raised pedestrian crossover, so a raised ramp in the middle of the street that will connect the two public plazas. One of the things we heard through our ongoing consultation process was that this area needs to have an opportunity for public programming, public events, and for the pop-up patio program that's been really successful across the city. Mm-hmm. So Victoria Avenue has been designed that it could be closed often for public events. So part of why we have this wide crossover that's at grade, there's no curb edge, is that it's kind of a pedestrian-first environment when these public events are going on. You can go back and forth between these two brand new large plaza spaces to kind of have a pedestrian-friendly environment. One of the great features that these plazas provide as well are lots of overhead lighting, hookups for food vendors, for events, for other displays, and a water hookup is available too. So whether it's community markets, whether it's a food truck event, or just the patio program carrying on in these areas, lots of opportunities for programming in the space once it's complete.
Yeah, so the idea here is that this is going to help really revitalize the South Core. It's not just about getting rid of the expensive Victoriaville. There's a bit more to it than that.
That's right. So this is just one step in many of the things that the city is doing in downtown Fort William. This is a huge project, of course. One of the things that we're hoping will occur, of course, is the reinvestment privately in this area once this project is done, with the increased pedestrian traffic, the increased vehicular traffic, and of course by providing opportunities for private use of the public spaces, being the facades and wider boulevards.
So you were at council on Monday. You brought this plan to them. What do they have to say to you?
Yeah, so council was excited. This has been a long road to get here.
It has been, yes.
Yes, I believe it's been 8 years or so of going through council and the public process to get to this point. So it really was an amazing milestone that the project was tendered. So we brought that information to council that the project was tendered, and it actually came in within budget. So there was some, of course, concern with everything going on right now with the tariff situation and some uncertainty in what the bid prices were going to come in at. And we were quite pleased that the lowest tender price was within our available budget, so we were able to proceed without having to move any funds around, and we could just get this project rolling very quickly. And
I guess, so what's the end timeline? This summer we're going to see some massive changes downtown, but when do we maybe see the final product?
Yeah, so the project will be built in several stages. Again, the deconstruction kind of happening this year with the building renovations. Next year will be the construction of Victoria Avenue. There's a deadline built into our tender package where Victoria Avenue has to be open to traffic again, and all those storefronts open to business, essentially, by October 30th of 2026. The overall completion date for the project, though, is actually June 2027, and that's where a lot of the streetscaping, the unit pavers, the benches, the landscaping can occur. Kind of very similar to what you would see in the north end of town with Court Red River Road, where that landscaping features were completed after the road work was done.
Aaron, appreciate you coming in today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jeff.
That's Aaron Ward. He is the city's manager of engineering, and he joined me today in the Minutes studio. And a big thanks for listening to the Minutes this week. Of course, if you want more information about City Council, agendas, or minutes, visit thunderbay.ca/council. If you want to listen to past episodes, just check out our website, thunderbay.ca/theminutes. You can also find the Minutes wherever you get your podcasts, plus you can find us on YouTube and on our website as well. If you want to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening at City Hall, just hit that subscribe button. I'm Jeff Walters. Thanks for listening this week. We'll chat again next week. Make it a great day.